Welcome back to Leaders Whiteboard, episode number 14. I am Ashik. In the last session, we talked about Spotify model versus team topologies for effective team organization, which you need to know as an engineering leader or a manager. So today we'll talk about another thing that you have to do a lot as an engineering manager or as a leader, which is hiring people. But instead of talking about the whole hiring end to end, we'll just talk about designing an engineering interview process. Like working with your HR or recruiter as an engineering manager or leader, sometimes you may have to design an engineering process from scratch for a particular role or for multiple roles. Or sometimes you will have to actually follow whatever is the existing process you have in the company, and then maybe you want to tweak a little bit here and there, change a few things here and there as an engineering manager. So that's why you need to know. So hiring is a very tricky but a very important part for us, for managers, and for the company's success. So let's just focus on one particular area today. So let's dive deep into engineering interview process. So the way the interview process you can think of starts is actually from the top of the funnel. You as an engineering manager working with your recruiting team, either in-house or third party, like external, and prepare a top of the funnel, how you are going to receive the resumes of candidates. So in many companies, you'll see it's already set up. Sometimes you may have to set it up from scratch. So we call that top of the funnels, the different applicants, how they are going to come into our application system to start with. And then many companies nowadays, to save human resource time for processing the applications, they use a kind of tool, software tool called application tracking system, or ATS. So what happens, the candidates apply through your website or through a link and so on, or from LinkedIn, whatever it is. Their application, their resume, their cover letter, all those get submitted through the ATS to your system. Let's say Greenhouse is a popular tool or SaaS service for this, that people manage for, companies manage for interview management. So you don't know what kind of ATS or application tracking system your company will be using. There may be many, but the resume of the top of the funnel candidates has to go through that ATS first. That's the step one that we are seeing here. The ATS looks for certain kind of keyword based on the job description and title, and figures out which resumes can be filtered out without further screening by the recruiter. So the ones that it doesn't filter out goes to the recruiters for screening. That's the next stage. The recruiter looks into a subset of the applications that came through the ATS system, right? That the ATS system thinks are potential candidate, like the recruiter should look at. So we call this recruiter screening. You as a hiring manager is yet not involved in this first two stage. Once the recruiter takes a look into the resumes, maybe a few minutes, maybe a little bit more, they decide if this is worth moving to the next stage or should be filtered out right away. Like by next stage means the recruiter giving a call to the candidate or not. Does the candidate deserve a call? So usually they do, unless from their experience they can easily say that no, although the ATS has let it pass, this is not worth. So in general, this is the stage where a candidate may get an initial call from a recruiter, like 10 to 15 minutes quick call just to understand or maybe even a half an hour call by the recruiter to the candidate. So up to this is fine. And then if the recruiter thinks it's worth moving to the next stage, talking to the hiring manager or interview funnel, then the recruiter will forward to the next stage, which optionally sometimes it will be hiring manager screen. Like from recruiter, maybe the recruiter says, hey, I have a strong candidate, do you want to talk to that candidate? That is the hiring manager screen. So it may be another 30 minutes of call or 45 minutes call by the hiring manager to the candidate. So this stage is optional because for certain roles, These are necessary for certain roles. The hiring manager screening is not needed. Hiring manager will interview as part of the on-site interview at a later stage. But in some other cases, hiring manager screening happens earlier, even before the on-site interview happens, just to save time for the interview panels or save company time. So that's the hiring manager screening. Now, once the hiring manager screening has happened, and a hiring manager thinks this person should go through the next level of the interview process, then they will usually schedule the on-site or remote on-site interview process. Sometimes before remote on-site interview, they can have another technical filtering interview. For example, if you're a software engineer, so there may be a lead code or hacker rank type of online coding, data structure and algorithm coding kind of interview. So that is for particular type of role, particularly software engineer. If you are, it has to go through. Otherwise, usually it is the next stage, the on-site interview. Some other companies also give, instead of data structure algorithm interview online, they give project, like for a few days you will be sent by the recruiter a project, and in 2 days, 3 days or 7 days you have to submit that project. So this is less practiced, but this is there also. Okay, so the next step is actually on-site interview. That's where you have to design. There will be multiple technical assessment sessions, and there will be multiple behavioral skills assessment sessions, and sometimes there is a culture fit or add session by someone from HR and so on. You can put it in the panel. So as a hiring manager, you have to design those, how many sessions you want. And then once those are done, a feedback is received from the interview participants. A debrief session is held usually by the hiring manager or the recruiter in presence of all the interviewers for that candidate. And then out of that meeting, the hiring manager decides whether to move forward with an offer or not, hire no hire decision. That's the usual flow. That's like at a very high level. So you as a hiring manager has a lot of flexibility on how you want to restructure this flow of interview process. For example, let's say a typical senior software engineering interview process. Let's take a look at it, how you can set it up as a manager. And it doesn't have to be exactly like this. It can be different, but you'll get an idea what's involved. So look at this one. Again, it's similar to the earlier picture, but it's a little bit more detailed and specific to a senior software engineer. So again, the top of the funnel, the senior software engineer probably saw the advertisement open position in LinkedIn. So they applied through LinkedIn link, like easy apply or apply to this job. It hit the ATS system of your company, application tracking system, and the resume was looked up by the recruiter. So the recruiter screening will happen next. Recruiter will give a call to the candidate and find a good time. And this time, see, instead of hiring manager screening, what I have put here is a data structure and algorithm interview. It's typically 45 minutes online through a tool like Codility or HackerRank and so on, where there will be one engineer from the company available online, and candidate has to log in there, and the candidate will be given a data structure and algorithm problem. And within that time frame, the candidate has to solve this problem and explain to the interviewer how they have solved it. So this is pre-screening. This is before on-site. So not even on-site, it's also part of the filtering criteria. So if the candidate passes this interview, then they will be called for an on-site interview. So if they fail, then it's the process finishes here. But if they pass, there will be that another 4 or 5 sessions in a single day, or some candidates want to do it in a couple of days because they have to otherwise take time off from office, and so on. So in 1 or 2 days, in 4 or 5 different sessions, the on-site interview happens. And on-site interviews nowadays are more remote after COVID time, but it can still be mixed. It can be actually physically on site also, depending on your company and the geography or location where you are. So because it is a senior software engineer interview, you'll see the first pre-screening was remote, a technical interview, right? We had data structure and algorithm. And now on the on-site interview also, you will see a lot of technical sessions. A typical one can be like you start with a system design and architecture session, maybe 45 minutes, maybe 1 hour, maybe half an hour. Usually it's 45 minutes or 1 hour because it takes a little bit time to take the system design and architecture interview, particularly for backend engineers like senior software engineers and so on. Then this will be taken by another engineer or an architect in the company, usually not hiring manager, not a product manager, not someone else, but another engineer in the team. And then often there is another second coding interview. Like the first coding interview was data structure and algorithm pre-screening, right, before on-site. Even on-site, hiring managers often want to re-verify one more time another coding interview, but this time instead of doing it in HackerRank or in laptop, the hiring manager or typically the interviewer may want to actually go the old-fashioned whiteboard way, whiteboard coding, write it down, give a problem, and let's try to solve it. The interviewer and interview together try to solve it in a whiteboard with pen and so on, right? Marker and so on the whiteboard. So this again can be another 45-minute session or even 1 hour session. So see, these two are technical interviews. Then comes the soft skill interview or behavioral interview. And the order, it can be in any order. It doesn't have to be in this particular order, but these are the sessions that should be there in a typical senior software engineer interview. So what is that? One is the technical behavioral interview. Another is a cross-functional behavioral interview. Both are soft skills, but the technical behavioral interview that happens, usually this is taken by another engineer. Often it's a QA engineer, for example, let's say quality engineer, or maybe another architect, or maybe another backend engineer. So if it's a backend engineer or a QA engineer, they may actually try to give you a real life production issue or a problem from their past experience and say a production issue has happened. This is the use case or scenario. How would you go ahead with debugging it? So with this, it's not just about what tech stack or technical words they are using. It's how they explain it is the focus of the thing. Are they good at communication and collaboration? Are they a good team player? So that's why it's a behavioral interview, soft skill, but then it's a technical behavioral interview because the content of the problem is usually technical, like a production issue you are trying to debug, or they will say, here is a end-to-end SDLC, software development lifecycle, and here are some, can you identify some gaps and how would you solve those gaps? These are not really system design questions. These are not really coding, data structure, algorithm problem, or they will not ask you to write a database query or anything. It's more like how you interact with your team members when there are technical issues or technical problems to solve. That's the goal of trying to understand the technical behavioral interview. Some companies have it, many companies don't have it, but this is a good option to have in your arsenal. The other one is a very standard behavioral interview, which is cross-functional behavioral interview, which is usually you are interviewing a senior software engineer. In that team, there are other people also there, like a product manager or a UX designer or DevOps, reliability engineer, infrastructure engineer, someone else, right? So behavioral interview better to be taken by a non-engineer, like a product manager, or maybe a UX designer is also another option, but typically the product manager is a better idea because they should have a say. They have to work with this engineer once they are hired in the team, right? So that will be a behavioral but cross-functional interview, but of cross-functional nature. Through this, usually you get an idea about the hard skill and soft skill of the interviews, couple of technical, couple of behavioral interviews. But then you can also add a HR person, HRBP person interviewing the candidate for culture fit or culture add. Often it can be an HR person or it can be the hiring manager themselves. The hiring manager can figure out is it the right culture fit or culture fit. So this 5th one. These are the on-site interview. So once you have it, usually what happens is within 24 hours or so, the interviewers are supposed to submit their review. How did the candidate perform? Write down their rating, hire, no hire, recommendation, strength and weakness, and so on. So those part are feedback they are giving in that SaaS application people usually use, like greenhouse.io or whatever tool the company is using. But then the recruiter or the hiring manager will be calling for a debrief session for this candidate. Let's say within the next 2 days, maybe a couple of days later or 2-3 days later, the debrief session should be run by that either the engineering manager or recruiter, whoever it is. End of the day, it is to help the hiring manager to make the hire no hire decision. So all the interviewers should be already submitting their review before attending that debrief session. So let's say the debrief session is a 30-minute debrief session for very important openings or high-level openings. It may be a lot more than that, 45 minutes or even maybe 1 hour. But 30 minutes is a usual standard for debrief sessions. By that time, the hiring manager will try to ask the interviewers, okay, have you looked at this? How strongly you feel about this yes or about this no? Is there anything we are missing? All this kind of thing. Everyone will try to say their opinion so that the hiring manager can make up their mind. And then the end result of this debrief session is the hiring manager may tell at that session itself is that, okay, I'm going to extend an offer, like hire or no, I'm not going to extend an offer or no hire. They can, or the hiring manager may say, okay, I will let you all know what I have decided. Let me think on it. So, and then they can decide it later. That's the typical engineering interview process. This also varies based on what kind of company you are working on. If it is a small startup, you may not have very large loop end-to-end cycle for each candidate, because you are usually under deadline, rush, the number of interviewers, the number of employees less in the company, they have to deliver a lot, so they cannot give too much time for interview either. Not too many people should be coming through the interview funnel. So the sessions are often, instead of 45 minutes, 30 minutes, instead of 1 hour, 45 minutes, and so on. Instead of 5 sessions, maybe 4 on-site sessions, that kind of thing, if it's a startup or a small size company, versus if it is a medium size or a large company, you will see number of steps may even more be than what I have given in this picture. So extended, like multiple rounds, multiple days the candidates have to come, and so on. So the company size can also dictate the how you should design the interview process, like, because the availability of your interviewer's time, that's also an important factor to consider here. So this is what I thought can be a good example for you as a hiring manager when you are taking interviews or designing an interview process. I'm curious to know how you do the hiring in your company. Is it a lot longer than this, a lot shorter than this? Are there different type of interview sessions other than what I have mentioned here? Please write down in the videos comment, the YouTube comment. I will be replying based on whatever question or opinion you have. And if you think this video was useful, please like the video and subscribe the channel, so that when I create a new video, upload a new video, you get automatically notified. So thank you for your time, and I'll come up with the next video soon.